pupils, this is an English language lesson. The lesson for the day is for Form 5 and it is based on the textbook Download B+. The theme is People and Culture and it is Unit 2. The topic is Life's Great Mysteries. Before we begin, let's look at the learning standards. So for this lesson, we have speaking and also writing. The main skill, speaking 2.3.1, keep interaction going in discourse level exchanges by paraphrasing and rephrasing appropriately. And then writing 4.1.4, express and respond to real or imagined opinions and feelings. Now the complementary skills, speaking 2.1.1, explain information on familiar topics from diagrams, charts, tables, graph, or other visuals. And then we are speaking 2.1.5, explain and justify own feelings or those of others. Now let's begin the lesson with our introduction. Can you name these mysterious places? There are 6 pictures here. These are some of the mysterious places in the world. So here we have Crooked Forest, Poland, Door to Hell, Turkmenistan, Devil's Bridge, Germany, Nazca Lines, Peru, Loch Ness, Scotland, Blood Falls, Antarctica, Fairy Circus, Namibia, Stonehenge, England, and Eternal Flame Falls, New York, USA. So just now we have 6 pictures. Can you name the places? The first picture here, it is Stonehenge, England. The second picture is Blood Falls, Antarctica. Third is Crooked Forest, Poland. The fourth is Devil's Bridge, Germany. And then we have Door to Hell, Turkmenistan. And then the last one is the Nazca Lines in Peru. Dear pupils, let's continue our lesson with speaking. So here, the first task is ask and answer the questions with a partner. What do you know about the history of your local area? Do you find historical mysteries interesting or do you prefer to know all the facts? Have you or has anyone you know ever seen a ghost? If not, would you like to? So you can find a partner and ask and answer these questions. And then for number 2, in speaking tasks, you're often asked to compare several ideas and then choose which you think are most suitable in the situation given. Therefore, you need to be familiar with using the comparative and superlative forms. Choose the correct options from the sentences below. So let's look at the first one. That's quite a good idea, but I think a or better idea would be. So the answer is better idea. Next, number 2, I don't feel that is more interesting as. So the answer is as interesting as. Number 3, the more or most useful idea out of all the options is. The answer will be the most. Number 4, I would prefer because it is less or least expensive than. So the answer will be less expensive than. Number 5, is more likely to get results than or as. Answer is than. Number 6, I think I would prefer or rather to do because. The answer will be I think I would prefer. So let's look at the download. This type of task is asking you to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of all the options before you make your final choice. So don't just decide which 2 options you think are best and talk only about those. You must discuss what you think about each option first and then choose the best one. So here, work with a partner. Your teacher has asked you and your partner to research and write a project about a mystery in your area. Here are some ways in which you can investigate and discover information. First, talk to each other about how useful each idea would be. Then, decide which 2 ideas you would choose. Use the words and phrases in the language bank to help you. So let's look at the question here where you have the notes. How can we find out about local mysteries? So there are 5 options. Visit the local museum, ask elderly people for stories from their past, speak to local police officers, do research on the internet, and get books out of the local library. For task 4, you can work in pairs to discuss these questions. Do you prefer reading books or watching television or films about mysteries? Do you prefer mysteries about the supernatural like ghosts, vampires, or others, or crime mysteries? Would you like to experience living in the past if you could? If so, which period? Why do you say that? Now let's look at the language bank. Saying what you think. You can use I think that or I don't think that. I feel that or I don't feel that. I would say that. I believe that. I don't believe that. Expressing a preference. You can write or you can say, personally, I would prefer to, or personally, I would rather. Next, we have is more likely to, is less likely to, would be more interesting, would be more useful, would be more helpful than. Then the last one is not as interesting or is not as useful, helpful as. Let's look at some sample for these questions. How can we find out about local mysteries? So here is the text. You have 2 people, A and B. So you can start by saying, Amin, how can we find out about some local mysteries? And then your partner will answer, is it for the class project? Then you can say, yes, it is a project on the mystery in our area. Our teacher, Mr. Smith, gave us the project yesterday. Well, I think we can visit the local museum. There are a lot of exhibitions and information there. The museum has a library too. We can read some articles to know about the mysterious places or events that had occurred. That sounds great. My father told me that he could ask some elderly people for stories from their past. He knows some old folks in my housing area. My father is also chipping in. He's willing to bring us to the local police. We can speak to the police officers. Maybe they have information about mysteries that were reported to them. What a fabulous suggestion. There's always the internet. We can do research by surfing the internet. There are bound to be some information about our area. I did that yesterday. There are a few websites that could be useful for us. I will share the links with you later. Personally, I would prefer to get the information from the internet and confirm the details with some people, as there is a lot of false information online. I believe you are correct. What about visiting the local library? We can try getting books from there. I like that idea. The local library would be useful for our project. Here you can see the discussion between A and B. But remember that there is no final decision. So you can practice by using this example, and then you can come up with your own conclusion, whether you want to choose an option or 2 options. Now we're going to move on to the 3rd section, which is the vocabulary and grammar. First, we are going to learn phrasal verbs. So this is the exercise. So we have a few phrasal verbs here. Leave me out, leave me behind, brought back, brought about, pass down, pass away, dug up, dug in, fell for, fell into, reading up on, or reading out. So these are the phrasal verbs. Question 1, circle the correct words. So there are 6 sentences here. Number 1, I don't want to stay in the graveyard by myself. Please don't leave me behind. Mary went to Mexico and brought back an interesting book about the Aztecs. Number 3, the White Lady of Castle Huntley is the ghost of a woman who passed away in the 17th century. Number 4, look, someone has dug out one of the ancient graves. Number 5, did you really think he would cut the woman in half? I can't believe you fell for that old trick. Number 6, I've been reading on the Bermuda Triangle. Some bizarre things have happened there. Now we have another exercise. Match the phrasal verbs you didn't use in one with the meanings below and then write a sentence using each one in your notebook or your exercise book. Okay, what is the phrasal verb for start doing something by chance? So the answer is fall into. Number 2, give knowledge or teach skills to younger people. So the answer will be pass down. Number 3, say the words you are reading so people can hear them. So the answer is read out. Number 4, not include someone or something. So the answer is leave out. Start eating hungrily. So dig in. Make something happen. Bring about. Now we have vocabulary, commonly confused words. So we have odd and rare. Number 2, we have last, latest. Number 3, strength, power. 4, prices or prizes. Number 5, shade, shadow. And number 6, affect and effects. So let's look at the first one. That's odd. This door has got a wall behind it. The historian is interested in rare books. Number 2, the woman's last wish was to see her childhood home before she died. B, I've just finished Stephen King's latest book. I can't wait for his next one. Number 3, werewolves have a strange power. They are people during the day and wolves at night. Samson had the strength of many men until Delilah cut his hair. Number 4, this bookshop has got great prices on books about aliens and UFOs. Number B, at the Halloween party, there will be prizes for the people who looked the scariest. Then number 5, it's very hot. Let's go and sit in the shade of that old tree. B, people say that vampires don't have a shadow. And then for number 6, we are learning about the effects that the Europeans had on the Aztecs. A siren is a kind of mermaid. They say they sing. Their singing affects sailors in a strange way. Next, we have collocation and expressions. Complete the sentences with these expressions with time. So we have at times, be just like old times, have the time of your life, no time like the present, time and time again, time waits for no man. So let's look at number 1. Let's clean out the attic right now. Answer is, there's no time like the present. Let's clean out the attic right now. Let's have a Halloween party. It will be just like old times when we were young. And then number 3, I've told you time and time again to stay away from that old haunted house. Number 4, at times I feel like someone is watching me. It's spooky. Number 5, I'm taking you on a ghost tour of Edinburgh. You'll have the time of your life. Number 6, time waits for no man. Nobody can stop it or make it go more slowly. Now for grammar, we are learning used to, would, be, or get used to. Read about the uses of used to, would, be, get used to. Now let's look at the first one, used to. We use used to plus bare infinitive for actions that we did regularly in the past, but that we don't do now, and for states that existed in the past, but that don't exist now. Example, the archaeologist used to travel to fascinating places when he was young. Molly used to enjoy reading mystery novels, but now she doesn't. So let's look at the next one, would. We use would plus bare infinitive only for actions that we did regularly in the past, but that we don't do now. Example, the ghost would disappear as soon as anyone tried to take a picture of it. Next we have be, get used to. We use be used to plus gerund or noun to talk about something that is usual or familiar. We are used to hearing strange sounds in the attic. We use get used to plus gerund or noun to talk about the process of something becoming familiar. He is getting used to living near a cemetery. He quite likes it now. Be and get change depending on the tense that is needed in the context. Example, Pam's used to hearing her dog bark late at night. Kevin has never got used to staying in his grandparents' old house. So now, read these sentences and match them to their meaning. So we have, she is getting used to living alone. She is used to living alone. She used to live alone. So we have the meanings, she doesn't live alone anymore. It's no longer strange or difficult for her. It's beginning to feel normal, easier, and others. She is getting used to living alone. So the answer is, it's beginning to feel normal or easier for her. Number 2, she is used to living alone. So the answer is, it's no longer strange or difficult for her. And then the last one, she used to live alone. It means that she doesn't live alone anymore. So now you are going to read 2.3, 2.4 and 2.5 of the grammar reference in your textbook before you do the task. Here we have 2.3, used to. So we have affirmative, I, you, he, she, it, we, they used to sell. I, you, he, she, it, we, they did not used to sell. So this is the negative. So the first one is affirmative, the second is negative. Used to sell, did not used to sell. And then we have question. Did I, you, he, she, it, we, they used to sell? Then we have the short answers. Yes, I, you, he, she, it, we, they did. No, I, you, he, she, it, we, they didn't. We use used to, and then we add bare infinitive for actions that we did regularly in the past, but that we don't do now. That used to collect rare stamps. Number 2, states that existed in the past, but that don't exist now. I used to be scared of spiders. Okay, let's look at the note. We can often use the past tense or past simple and used to in the same way. She lived in a haunted house. So this means she used to live in a haunted house. And then we have 2.4, would. Affirmative, I, you, he, she, it, we, they would sell. Negative, I, you, he, she, it, we, they would not sell. The question, would I, you, he, she, it, we, they sell? And the short answers, yes. I, you, he, she, it, we, they, would. No. I, you, he, she, it, we, they, wouldn't. We use would. And then we add bare infinitive for actions that we did regularly in the past, but that we don't do now. We don't use it for past states. The spirit would appear 2 or 3 times a year. Next, we have 2.5. Be, get, used to. We use be, used to, plus gerund or noun to talk about something that is usual or familiar because we have seen or experienced it before. I am used to living in a haunted house. We use get used to, and then we add gerund noun to talk about the process of something becoming familiar because we often see or experience it. Example, Paul is getting used to working in the history museum. Okay, let's look at the note. Be and get change depending on the tense that is needed in the context. Tim's used to being left behind. His brother walks much faster than he does. You get used to hearing odd noises. It's a very old house. So now let's look at the exercises. Complete the sentences with the correct form of used to and the verbs in brackets. In which of the sentences in 3 would you also use would? So let's look at the first one. The answer will be sentences 1, 2, 3, and 6. So for these sentences, you can also use would. Number 1, they used to go to Stonehenge for the festival every summer. Number 2, as a child, I used to dress up on October 31st. Number 3, my uncle used to write crime stories when he was younger. Number 4, did you used to believe in werewolves and vampires? Number 5, Tony and I didn't used to like reading about aliens, but now we do. Number 6, Sarah Winchester used to sit in the blue room every night. So now let's look at the fourth exercise. The Smith moved into an old castle. They didn't like it at first, but they have got used to some things and are getting used to others. Write sentences about them in your notebook or exercise book using the correct form of be, get used to. Number 1, live in the countryside. It's starting to feel normal. Number 2, own such a big building. It's still strange. Number 3, hear bizarre sounds at night. It's starting to feel normal. Number 4, see ghosts in the garden. It's no longer strange. Number 5, get a lot of curious visitors. It's no longer strange. So here are some sample sentences. The rest you need to write in your exercise books. It's still strange, but they are getting used to own such a big building. The Smiths are used to lots of curious visitors. Now for exercise 5, circle the correct answers. So here we have dialogues or conversation A and B. So let's look at number 1. A, how is your son? B, he's fine. He is getting used to university life. Number 2, A, did Mr. Bones used to work in that graveyard? B, no, he worked in the one in my village. Number 3, A, Dina isn't used to cooking her own meals. B, that's because her mom always cooks for her. Number 4, A, Fran looks different now. B, yes, she used to wear glasses. Number 5, A, I've never used this computer program before. B. Don't worry, you'll get used to it. Number 6. A. Do you remember staying with Grandma when we were kids? B. Yes. She would tell us spooky stories at bedtime. Dear pupils, now we are going to do the writing lesson. For writing, this lesson we're gonna write stories. So making it life-like. Stories contain description, action, and people. You can make the reader care more about what happens to your characters by making them come to life and seem real. 2 ways to do this are by writing what they say or think and by describing how they feel. So here, let's complete the first exercise. Complete these sentences with a suitable verb and adverb to describe how the characters from different stories say something. So you have verbs: screamed, shouted, sighed, told, whispered. Adverbs: angrily, decisively, excitedly, happily, and nervously. So let's look at the first sentence. She tiptoed into the old dark house. Hello? Is anyone here? She whispered nervously. Someone's coming to save us, shouted the boy excitedly. Leave me alone, she screamed angrily. I'm going to win this race, he told himself decisively. This has been the best day of my life, she sighed happily. Now for the second task. Complete these sentences with a suitable adjective to describe how the characters from different stories feel. So we have the adjectives: astonished, desperate, exhausted, relieved, terrified. So the first sentence, Nick was, I can't believe it, he said. Then you have Amy's hand shook with fear as she picked up the phone. She was, thank goodness I found it at last, said Jen. I'm so. Number 4, she had been so determined to get to the top of the mountain, but now he was too to go any further. Number 5, she felt, there must be something I can do to help, she thought. So the answer, Nick was astonished. I can't believe it, he said. Number 2, Amy's hand shook with fear as she picked up the phone. She was terrified. Thank goodness I found it at last, said Jen. I'm so relieved. He had been so determined to get to the top of the mountain, but now he was too exhausted to go any further. She felt desperate. There must be something I can do to help, she thought. Now for number 3. Read this writing task and discuss the questions below in the class. You have seen this announcement in an English language magazine. We are looking for stories for our magazine. Your story must begin with this sentence. Anne knocked on the door of the house. She was determined to find out who lived there. Your story must include an old woman and a surprise. Write your story in 140 or 290 words. Can you think of 1 or 2 different kinds of stories you could write in answer to this writing task? What feelings might the characters experience? So now read the story that was written in answer to questions in 3 and answer the questions below it. Anne knocked on the door of the house. She was determined to find out who lived there. She had recently moved from America to the small village and had often admired the house's beautiful rose garden. She knocked again nervously. There was still no answer, but a wonderful, sweet smell of cooking was coming from the kitchen. Someone must be here, she thought hopefully. Just then she heard a soft cry. Help me, please. She ran to the back of the house and pushed her way through the back door in panic. An old lady was lying on the kitchen floor. I fell over and I think my ankle's broken, she explained weakly. After calling for an ambulance, Anne comforted her. As she stroked the old lady's soft white hair, she was astonished to see a birthmark on her neck. It was exactly the same shape as hers. Much later, they found out that the old lady was actually her great-aunt Elizabeth. After that, Anne spent many happy evenings in the house listening to old family stories and eating delicious cake. So let's look at the questions. Number 1, does the writer explain the situation in the given sentence? Number 2, does the writer include both points asked for in the task? Number 3, how many different feelings does Anne experience in the model story? Circle any words or phrases that show us how she feels. So here the first question is, does the writer explain the situation in the given sentence? The answer is yes. Does the writer include both points asked for in the task? The answer is yes. How many different feelings does Anne experience in the model story? Circle any words or phrases that show us how she feels. So there are 6 different feelings. So let's look at the words that show us how she feels. So the first one we have determined, second we have nervously, then we have hopefully, then we have in panic, we have next is astonished, and the last one is happy. Now, another way to bring your story to life is to use some of the 5 senses. So we have sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch in your description. Underline the examples of these in the model story. So we have sight, admired the house, beautiful rose garden. And another sight would be, she was astonished to see a birthmark. And then we have hearing, she heard a soft cry. Another for hearing would be, in the house, listening to old family stories. And then for smell, we have a wonderful sweet smell of cooking was coming from the kitchen. And then we have taste, eating delicious cake. And then for touch, we have, she stroked the old lady's soft white hair. Now, for task number 6, imagine you are on a beach in summer. With a partner, discuss ideas for each of the 5 senses. You have hearing, sight, smell, taste, and touch. So I've given an example here for hearing. What can you hear on a beach in summer? So hearing, crashing waves. Sight, clear blue sea. Smell, salty seawater. Taste, delicious fried seafood. Touch, soft sand. Dear pupils, let's look at the language bank. You can use these words or phrases in your writing. So we have time expressions, the next day, as, while, just then, suddenly, after that, afterwards, much later. For feelings, we have astonish, brave or bravely, calm, calmly, cheerful, cheerfully, confident, confidently, confused, decisive, decisively, desperate, desperately, excited, excitedly, exhausted, frustrated, miserable, relieved, scared. Next, we have ways of speaking or ways of thinking. Argue, complain, criticize, grumble, scream, shout, sigh, warn, whisper, wonder. Then we have senses. See, notice, observe, hear, can hear, smell, taste, touch, feel, salty, sweet, sour, bitter, the heat of the sun, the cool shade, a soft breeze, raindrops. Dear pupils, now we are going to look at your writing task for today's lesson. Read this writing task and use the plan and the language bank to help you write your story. When you have finished your story, check your work carefully. So let's look at the instruction. You have seen this announcement in a new English language magazine for young people. Can you write a story for our new magazine series? Your story must begin with this sentence. As Mark was about to throw away the old bottle, he saw that there was a piece of paper inside it. Your story must include a message or a map or a surprise. Write your story in about 140 to 190 words. So we have the plan or the format. Paragraph 1, setting the scene and explaining the given sentence. Paragraph 2 and 3, action and description. And paragraph 4, the ending. Okay, let's look at the download. Make sure you include all points asked for in the task. Your story will be more lifelike and interesting if you first, describe how your characters feel. 2. Give them something to say or think. And 3. Use some of the 5 senses in your descriptions. Dear pupils, let's look at the sample answer.
As Mark was about to throw the old bottle, he saw that there was a piece of paper inside it. Up close it looked less remarkable. The bottle itself was grimy and cracked, and there were some suspicious-looking entities crawling up and down its walls. Mark was determined. Cautiously, he bent down, pulled out the cork and extracted the note, taking care not to cut himself on the jagged mouth of the bottle. The piece of paper was slightly heavy with water, and Mark held his breath, lest by breathing he might tear it. At last, it was out. Holding it up to the light of the grey afternoon, he began to read, but the words were in a foreign language. Spanish. Italian. It read: Christopher Columbus, September 18, 1493. Mark could not breathe. He continuously scrolled the letter up and down with a wide grin on his face. It dawned upon him that if the letter was real, he could be rich. The next day, Mark, who was still in shock, took a bus and went to the Leeds Fine History and Art Museum. He was approached by a man who was bespectacled and had graying hair and beard. "Good day, may I help you?" Mark, who could not find the suitable words to say, handed the man the dilapidated letter. Is this some kind of a joke? He was both amused and irritated. Mark stammered nervously. "I found it the Sunny Pier yesterday. It was in a bottle." Mark stared at his bewildered look. "Do you have the bottle?" Mark nodded and pulled it out from his backpack. The man's eyebrows rose. "Wait in the room there. I will get back to you." Speechless, Mark followed his pointed hand. When he returned, his face was lit up with excitement. The wrinkled paper was placed in a glass frame. "Do you realize what you have found?" He took Mark's hand and was squeezing it rather hard. "It's a genuine note. I will do more tests on it. I did a simple carbon test just now and compared the handwriting with some documents that we have. Columbus wrote this note about 500 years ago." Mark was dumbfounded, and the only thing that came to his mind was the wish that the note would be worth a few $1,000s. He bit his lower lip and prayed. "Is it worth anything?" he mumbled. "Yes. Yes. Definitely yes. At least $25 million. The man grinned. Mark's jaws dropped to the floor.
Dear pupils, thank you for watching this video, and then do remember to subscribe to my channel. It is called Educator OmniTube. Signing off, I'm Madam Gan. Bye bye.